Engagers, this is Professor Game, where we interview successful practitioners of games, gamification, and game thinking who bring us the best of their experiences to get ideas, insights, and inspiration to help us in the process of using games and gamification in our daily lives, for example, to learn what we are teaching. And I am Rob Alvarez. I work at IronHack, teach at IE Business School University, and so much more, and host this podcast. If you have an extra second, please go ahead and subscribe for free to our email list at professorgame.com/subscribe. Engagers, welcome back to another episode of the Professor Game podcast. And we have with us today, Christen. But Christen, before we start this interview, we need to know, are you prepared to engage?
I am.
Let's do this because we have Christen Horne, who has always been a storyteller. She started with singing and musical theater at the age of 5 and went on to earn 2 music degrees. Fictional books, mostly fantasy and some sci-fi, were her friends growing up and continue to be a huge part of her life. The earliest books that she remembers reading are Jewel Kingdom books and the Jedi Apprentice Star Wars books. By day, she teaches singing to both advanced and beginners, including people who think they can't sing. And by night, she's either hanging out with her family or happily chronicling the events of her first fantasy novel. So plenty of exciting stuff going on, Christen. I don't know if we're missing anything from that intro.
No, that's a good intro. Yeah.
Amazing. So we want to know, what does being Christen look like? What is a regular day or week, whatever you want to go for?
Yeah. So I think pretty regularly, I read Jordan B. Peterson's book, and he said, like, make sure you wake up at the same time every day. And I did not used to be on board with that. I am very much a night owl and I like to sleep in. But I finally implemented that. So I get up at, 8 in the morning, and then I take my puppy to the dog park, and then I come back and I do some journaling for my mental health. And then, breakfast, and then I'll usually start working on, I'll either go to like my workout, or I'll start working on my book or some of the social media content that I'm developing for that. If it's a work day, then I'll, head to work, teach my students. I teach piano and singing. And then I come home and we'll usually hang out, watch some of The Office, or maybe we'll watch some Critical Role. I love D&D. And then, you go to sleep and do it all over again. Sometimes like there's other stuff mixed in, depending on the day. So I have some assigned writing days. And then I have days where since I'm in San Diego, I go to the beach for some recharging time. And then Sunday is our D&D day. So we play D&D every Sunday, which
nice.
is
I've been saying this for way too many episodes that I want to get into the RPGs, and I haven't. I'm 37 already, and I've never.
Oh my gosh.
But I have a 3-month-old now, so it's kind of a struggle
tough
at this point in life.
Oh yes, yeah.
We'll see how to manage. I'm sure I'll be able to do it. Hopefully, not too far in the future.
Yeah.
So, Christen, we always like to ask this question because it provides so much value to the audience, and it's all about understanding a time of a story. A time when you wanted to do something with games, with including this in your daily life, in your work, whatever it looked like. But things just didn't go the way you were expecting it. Things went wrong. You went into some form of fail or first attempt in learning. We want to be there in that story, learn from those lessons with you. We essentially want to relive that story. Hopefully it's not too painful, and it brings also some of the good that came out of it.
Yeah. So I have been an entrepreneur pretty much since I graduated from college. When was that? 2012. In America, if you're a singer or an artist, you're basically a freelancer from the time you graduate. So, there's entrepreneurial aspects to that. But I started working as a coach, actually, like a health coach first, and then a life coach. And then I guess the back end of the aspects of being a coach, like making sure all of your social media content was there and consistent and personable, and all the marketing, right? I tried to apply game-based solutions to that, and it just failed miserably every time. I wasn't consistent. It didn't feel, no amount of trying to pretend that was a game was going to help me. And I think that's something that I learned kind of the hard way, because I tried and tried and tried and tried for years to make it work. And it just never did. And it wasn't until, kind of recently that I realized it's like, well, okay, it doesn't matter how much like a game you make something. If it's a game you don't want to play, it's never going to feel good. So, and we know this kind of instinctively from the game, the literal games that we play, the games that we choose to play, the games that we choose not to play. I don't play, I don't know, Overwatch because I don't want to play that game. It's not enjoyable for me. Lots of people love that game. One of my favorite games used to be Destiny 2. Like, I love that game, but I just don't want to play it anymore because of the way the game kind of is now. Whereas like D&D, that is one of my all-time favorite games, and I enjoy playing it. I want to play it. So I take a step back and apply that to like real life. Like, if you're trying to gamify something in your life, but it's something you just don't want to do, like I think in the self-help, like kind of woo area, it's called like alignment, right? So you got to be honest with yourself, take a step back, take a pause, be like, do I actually enjoy this? And do I want to play this game? And if the answer is no, then stop. Now, I know sometimes that's really difficult if like that game is your job, which for me it was. It was the endeavor that I was working on to like bring more money in and cover the bills. But I ended up pivoting into now like I'm voice teaching, or teaching voice and piano, and that's a much more enjoyable game. Is it still the game that I want to be playing for the rest of my life? No, not necessarily, but I love the game. I love my students. I love getting to play that game. And so it is much more sustainable, and I can bring more of my gaming mindset to that endeavor because I genuinely enjoy it. So I guess that would be like that was the hard failures. Like I had one or two business endeavors that I was trying to apply the gaming mindset to, and it just failed miserably. But it did end up leading, kind of like what you said, leading to this epiphany that like those endeavors were just not in alignment with what I really wanted to do. So no amount of trying to slap on this fun label or add experience or add levels or milestones or whatever, that wasn't going to fix the problem, because the problem was that just wasn't me.
Huh.
I hope that's helpful.
Yeah, I think like one of the things for listening to what you're saying for me is there are, and this is something I've said as well in my workshops. One of the things I say is, sometimes, and I hope it's not contradicting to what you said. You'll correct me if it doesn't make sense. But one of the things I tend to say is, sometimes when you do gamification, because there's something you just have to do, right? In your case, you didn't necessarily have to do it. You did have a choice of not doing it. But let's say, for example, sometimes, and this is a typical example of, some trainings at some, especially large corporations, that you have to do like, I don't know, these trainings that are super boring, but they have to do with compliance. So you just have to do them, right?
Yep.
So sometimes it's not about people getting out of the training and saying, I want more of this training, right? I'm super excited. I want more of this training. They'll probably never say that anyway, right?
Right.
But if they... that you can rid them of the feeling of stick a pencil in my eye.
Yes.
And this is kind of bearable. That's already a lot better. You're improving people's lives a lot, even if it doesn't feel like it, because I know there's also sort of feeding our own egos of, oh yeah, I made this amazing thing and everybody's excited. Well, you did something. Nobody's excited and going to clap their hands and laugh out loud. But, a training that was stick a pencil in my eye is now a training that people can bear through. And, they'll actually listen to, which is probably the actual reason why they should be going through that training anyway.
Right. No, that's 100% like a totally valid application, I think. Like any amount of improvement. And I know for me, I coach on this all the time. Like I have a very like all or nothing kind of personality, which I think maybe a lot of gamers can identify with. But incremental progress, it matters. Like one of my new mantras is like, every little bit counts. Right. And one of my favorite gamification techniques, I don't know if we're jumping ahead a little bit, is like actually like assigning little bits of experience to like a bar. Because for me, watching the experience bar go up for whatever reason, that works for my brain. And it really helps me mitigate this all or nothing. Like if I can't do my full hour of workout, if I can only do 10 minutes, that's still better than not doing anything.
Yeah.
And it's like you said with the training, like if it's the difference between hating life and wishing, you could stick the pencil in your eye, or being like, okay, that was fine. like it's
Yeah.
still not my favorite thing in the world, but that was fine, then that matters. That matters. I think there's a temptation to be like, well, if it can't go from doom and gloom to sunshine and rainbows, it's like, well, maybe there's something in between, and
Yeah.
that matters, even if you can't get all the way to sunshine and rainbows, for sure.
So long story short, like I went through all this winding roads to say, well, sometimes some things, they're not, as you were saying in your story, they're not going to get amazing, and maybe it's a time to pivot if it's your own life, especially, right? There's
Yeah.
something you need to change. It's time to
Yeah.
pivot. But if you're trying to help other people, get into something better, well, again, sometimes the small improvements might be something to start with, right? If somebody is sick of what they're doing and you help them a little bit, that's already a little bit better.
Oh yeah, for sure. And it also depends on the context, right? So like
Yeah.
like I said, I've been an entrepreneur basically my whole life, or a freelancer. So just going from like little things, I've never had a standard 9 to 5. And so the pivot, that's very, I think that jumping to that idea is very reflective of my life as an entrepreneur. Like the applications of a gamification for like 9 to 5, or people in the tech industry, or even people in like startups in like Silicon Valley, that they're going to be a little different for sure.
Yeah.
Like you said, making the trainings like a little bit more enjoyable.
Absolutely. So let's actually take a complete shift and go for a time when using gamification games, your gameful strategies, ideas, or spirit even to something actually brought you good and positive results. Sometime where you say, well, this is something that could be like a proud story, or something that you say, well, this is a fantastic thing I did with this, and I'm proud of this. And of course, we always want to take some lessons. Maybe we want to see it, what could be some of the factors of that success in your opinion?
Yeah. So probably the most successful application, like the standard way of thinking of gamification for me, has been my daily habits. So I think it was maybe a year or two ago now, we downloaded this app called Habitica, which you may or may not have heard of. This is my favorite gamification app. Like, I think it's the best one, because that finally helped me get my daily habits like just really solidified. And I had never found a gamification app, or really any sort of like productivity app or anything, that had helped me like really get super consistent with my daily habits that I knew I wanted to do, but just like either I wasn't making time, or I felt like I didn't have time, or I just wasn't organized enough. So everything was too chaotic and I was forgetting. But writing it down in this app and being able to check it off every day, and then it makes like the little sound and you get experience points. And like, for whatever reason, that really worked for me. It doesn't work for everybody, but man, like that made a huge difference in my life. And if you're into self-help and you've done the daily habit work before, that like that might sound like a little win, but the daily habits are everything. The little things that you do consistently, it's like grinding for experience. That's the only way that you level up. Like if you are going after these super hard boss fights without doing the grind for experience and leveling up your skills, or working on, like, that boss fight's going to be really, really difficult. Like maybe you'll still get past it, but it's going to be super hard. Whereas if you're super consistent with your daily habits, then that boss fight, it might still be hard, but you're going to do a lot better. You're going to handle it better. You're going to come out with fewer battle scars. Yeah.
I know it's like a little bit of a classic example using Duolingo, right? But I always like to talk about Duolingo when, there is a way in which Duolingo decided, as you just were saying, that, when we get to learn a language, the main thing is practicing almost every day, at least, every day if possible, right? So what they did was, amongst many other things, of course, that they did, is making sure that you are actually getting to put that effort every single day, right? So things like the streaks and all those game mechanics that they include, those are part of the things that they do exactly to help you into getting into that habit, right?
Yep.
So they created it specifically for that, right? Because consistency is the main thing for many things. And with habits, it's definitely consistency what you're looking for, right? Make sense?
Oh, yeah.
Great. So when you have a problem, Christen, and you face a difficulty, and you say, well, actually, I think I'm going to use gamification to solve this, or to help solve this. How do you do it? Do you have some sort of process, a series of steps? How does that go in your mind?
For me, it's less of like, I don't think the thought I'm going to use gamification to do this. I've shifted into this space where I now have enough awareness of like, after thinking about all of this and doing all of the mental health work, that like I just am able to approach my problems with my gaming mindset. And I think that's distinct for me from gamification, because gamification is more of like designing the game. And I think there are people who do that very, very successfully, but I was never one of those people. I'm a player. I love playing games. I don't really design games. And so me as a player, then, like, how do I work through those problems in the same space that I work through problems in video games? Because we get frustrated in video games too. Like, there's a reason we like throw the controller at the TV or whatever. Like that, sometimes whatever game you're playing is that frustrating. It's like, okay, so but what do you do? Like after you throw the controller, you pick it back up, right? And then what? And then what? So for me, when I come up against a problem in real life now, I'm just in this space where I'm like, well, there has to be a way forward. Because that's the thought in video games, right? I love Tomb Raider, right? And so you're going down the path in Tomb Raider, and like you see a door that you're supposed to go through, and it's an ancient temple, and so the stage starts rumbling, and then rocks fall, and the door is gone, right? But is the game over? No. Lara Croft goes and she finds like a side. She like climbs off some cliffs and swings on some vines, and she finds another way into the temple, right? So that like. It's kind of like, it's like that. It's just this assumption that there has to be a way forward. There has to be something I can do. And so then and this is very general. Obviously, there are problems where there is nothing you can do. And that takes a little bit of a different approach, right? But just in general, for the problems, like assuming that there is something you can do about it. But for whatever reason, your brain just is not giving you the answer right now. Just to remind yourself, like, there has to be a way forward. There has to be a solution. So what's it going to be? What am I going to try? How can I be more resourceful, more creative? What new things can I try? And so that's a little bit of like insight into like my thought process of how I approach problems now. It's not like I'm going to design a game around this, but hopefully that's helpful.
Absolutely. Definitely is. Makes a lot of sense. Thank you for that. All those insights on the way you approach things, because I think it's, as you were saying, it's more about a mindset that you bring to your problem solving, right?
Yeah.
Just a quick break before we continue. Are you enjoying this podcast? If you're listening through a podcasting app, please subscribe and rate us on the app. This will be of great help to reach more engagers so we can change the world together through gamification.
Christen, what would you say, in your experience, of course, what would you say is sort of a best practice? That one thing or that mentality or that thing that helps you when you're approaching, this gameful mentality, that one thing that you say, well, doing this would actually help you do a little bit better or a lot better, whatever you want to go for.
I mean, I think it's going to be more of the same of what I've been talking about. One of the things that I thought a lot of gamification systems are missing is it's almost like they're trying to slap the game on top of the problem instead of integrating. Does that make sense? Like really getting to the root or like getting a little deeper. And so that's why my approach now has shifted more to like the thought processes. How do I think when I'm playing a game? How do I think when I'm like, or how do I feel when I'm playing a game? How do I approach these problems in video games? And then how can I port that into my real life? And I think a lot of gamification systems could use a touch more of like the mindset piece. Because a lot of it is just trying to design a game, which is fine. That's a good start, especially if, like you said, like it helps you going from wanting to stick the pencil in your eye to like being mostly okay. But I think a more thorough, if that makes sense, a more thorough solution would be making sure that you address the mindset piece. We all know how to play video games and we're extremely confident and we know we can do it. And even if all the odds are stacked against us, we're still we don't even blink an eye. Like even the people that play like friggin' Dark Souls, right? It's just insanely difficult game. I don't understand why people play it, but they do. They just throw themselves at it over and over and over, and they perfect and they memorize and they learn and they do that. And it's just like, oh my gosh, like if you approached your real life with that amount of belief in yourself, determination, and just like plain stubbornness, then like you could literally do anything. You could do anything.
Dark Souls is a pretty good example of that, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I've used it quite a few times in my workshops because even many people and even for saying that there are people who like a game like that one, and there's a bunch of people who don't even know what it's about. So there's so many interesting things to learn from a game like that one. But I'd like to ask you another question now, because we've gone through many of the questions already of the podcast. You've been into them and poured your thought process here, and I'm thinking like. This is a question, of course, we ask everyone, but when you're going through these questions, is there an idea that comes up and says, oh, maybe this person would be like super interesting, again, for you to listen to answering these questions, sort of a future guest for Professor Game?
Oh, well, I don't know. Have you had Jane McGonigal yet?
No, we haven't.
Okay. Well, but you know who that is.
Yes.
So yeah, that would be, I mean, she's probably kind of hard to get a hold of, but like I loved like this. I know this is another jumping ahead a little bit, but I loved her book Super Better. Like that was, I like this word pivotal these days, but that was instrumental. Like that was just a fantastic book. So if you could get Jane McGonigal, that would be fantastic, because her story is amazing, and just her general process. And then there's another guy whose book I have. His name is Justin Gary. Like I think he's a game designer. And I think, you would have a lot of fun having him on your show.
Jerry, what? Can you repeat the last name?
Justin Gary, Gary.
Justin Gary. Okay.
Yeah. He wrote a book called Think Like a Game Designer.
Cool. Yeah. Justin Gary. I'll look him up. I haven't heard of him.
Yeah.
And
I think he's local to San Diego, I think.
Nice.
Yeah.
Nice. So keeping up with the recommendations, and I know you mentioned a book. I don't know if you want to say the same one or another one. What would be your book you would recommend this audience, and of course, let us know why.
Yeah. Well, Super Better, for sure. I already said that, but that's just an amazing book, because I think that's really what kind of triggered this whole cascade of ideas that I have arrived at in terms of like bringing that gameful mindset into real life. And that all started with Jane's book, Super Better, for sure. And then Think Like a Game Designer, I also really enjoyed, though I will be completely honest, I didn't totally finish it. I got stuck in a section that was like specifically for people who were designing games, and then I put it down, and then I just forgot to finish. But I do remember what I read of the book. I really, really enjoyed, because it's very thoughtful. It's very clear. It's not a lot of like practical. Sorry, that's the word I'm looking for. It's very practical, just like things that you can implement now as you're reading the book, and just step by step, which I think is super helpful. Both of those books actually have that.
Amazing. Yeah. Thank you very much for those recommendations, both authors as authors, and as definitely as guests in the future, hopefully.
Yeah.
Amazing. And we've talked about, things that you recommend from other people. In your case, what would you say is your superpower in this space? That thing that you do at least better than most other people?
I feel like I'm going to start sounding like a broken record. It's this shift from trying to put a game system on top of things to shifting, like bringing how you approach video games into how you approach real life. I think that's something that I've been practicing for, I guess, 5 or so years now. And so I feel like that definitely has turned into one of my superpowers. And it's like I get so excited about it. And I tell people, and they look at me like, we don't really want to hear about this. And their eyes kind of glaze over, but they're smiling and nodding and just kind of like humoring you. But like when you think about the applications, there's a meme, there's a joke out on the internet about like how to put Dungeons and Dragons on your professional resume, right? And that's not a joke, or like that, it shouldn't be, right? I legitimately think people should be able to put Dungeons and Dragons on their professional resumes, because there's so much that goes into that game that are like, those are success. Hold on. What's the word I'm looking for, or the term?
Success predictors, maybe?
No. Yes. Yeah. Like success predictors, right? All of these things that people, and I started to notice this when I was getting really into like entrepreneurship and self-help and reading all of the, all of the books. And I started to notice all of the books. Well, like the entrepreneurship books, right? The grind, the hustle, what is that term? I think it's just entrepreneurship. But, I started to notice they were like, oh, this is what all successful people have. They all do this. They all do this. They all do this. They all do this. And I started to notice, we're like, wait a minute, we do that. Gamers do that just for fun. But we're doing it in video games. So if we can somehow bring that, our being, who we are in video games, which I would posit is more truly of who we are, because we're not afraid. Right? When we're playing in video games, when we're playing in D&D, we're not afraid of most of the time. We feel more free to be who we really are, which can be a good or a bad thing, because some people use it as an excuse to be more of a jerk, but some people use it as more of an excuse to be a very kind, generous, amazing person. Right. Or very determined or very confident or very, they'll go like the people who will reach out and like Sherpa people in like World of Warcraft or Destiny 2 or really in anything. Like they don't have to do that. So that's more of who they are than who they present themselves in real life. So my whole like spiel or shtick became bringing who we are in games into real life. I don't remember if that answers the question, but
Absolutely. What's your superpower in this space? So,
yeah. So, well, obviously, as I'm developing this philosophy or this idea, I'm practicing it myself because, I really I'm definitely a believer in, practice what you preach. So I would definitely say that's one of my superpowers. Does it work like 100% of the time? No, sometimes I still, fear will be the biggest one. Fear is the biggest emotion, I think, that turns the real you off. That's a weird way of saying it, but which is funny because I know there are definitely philosophers out there who are like, oh, fear shows you who you really are. I don't know if that's true. Like maybe it's true in some senses, but like I definitely know that there's like in at least in America, there's this lack of confidence that is, I guess, quote unquote, typical for gamers in real life. Well, geeks too, like just nerds, right? We're typically not known for having like overflowing with confidence, right? We're the ones that got bullied and shoved into lockers. Except when we're in games. So anyway, we'll just go in circles and keep talking about this. But yeah.
Amazing. Thank you very much. It's always exciting to see how people are excited about something. And when it's a superpower, that thing that you do great. If you're excited about it, it means you're also using it and it's useful in your own life. So that is absolutely amazing. And this is going to come as a difficult one, perhaps like for many of our other guests as well. But we would like to know, what is your favorite game?
Well, I mean, right now my favorite game is Dungeons and Dragons.
Period. End of story, right?
Right now, yeah, it sure is. It's the only game that I still get to play consistently. The rest of them have kind of taken a side. I've set them aside because something that I have found really, really exciting is that the same kind of reward and engagement and flow feeling that you get from video games, I have actually found in writing my book. And so I have gotten to the point where I'll ask myself, would I rather play video games or would I rather write my book? And the answer 9 times out of 10 is I would rather write my book. And that is just such an exciting place to be because I never, ever, 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 ever thought that there would be anything that I would rather do than play video games. And somehow I found that. Hold on. I was going to bring that around to the question. I get so excited about these ideas. Oh, my favorite game. So yeah, hands down, my favorite game right now is Dungeons and Dragons. If I had to pick like a video game, I've been really, really enjoying Tiny Tina's Wonderlands. My husband and I are really big into Borderlands. We love those games. Borderlands 3, not so much. Didn't do great. But Tiny Tina's Wonderlands.
Which one is your favorite game? Come on, we need to put you to the fire.
Fine. Then I'll pick Dungeons and Dragons. Yeah.
Amazing. Easy. Thank you for that. That one has come up a few times before. And again, as I said at the start, this is something that I need to fit into my schedule at some point for sure.
Yeah.
So Christen, thank you so much for investing this time in sharing your experience, sharing your knowledge with the engagers, with this amazing community of people who are interested in what games can do in other areas of life. Before we take off, please let us know where we can find out more about you. Let us know if you have any final message or any call to action, anything in between, before we say it's game over.
Yeah. Well, so you can find me for social media if you want to connect. I am at World of Urda, URDA. And we're on basically pretty much every social media. That's my book social media, but I'm there. I'm pretty active. So if you want to reach out and connect with me, I'm happy to chat about games, about anything. We do post a lot about D&D. But and I guess some like last advice would be, if you're listening and you are a gamer and you've been a lifelong gamer, or Dungeons and Dragons, or even just a nerd, like if you do a lot of reading, like Rob has these questions like, what's your superpower? And I think a lot of people, it's hard to believe, but you do have a superpower. Like he asked that of his guests and you think, oh yeah, but they're special. They're different. I don't have one. That's like 100% false. You have a superpower, like, especially if you're a gamer, like just if you can get yourself to practice this idea of bringing who you are in a video game to who you are in real life and starting to like merge those two people and really start to embrace that kind of confidence, that kind of playful mentality, that kind of creativity, creative problem solving, determination. Like I get so excited about this idea because I think if gamers could do that, just start to port themselves from games to real life, then we could legitimately change the world. I mean, we already are, but we could do it even more. Like think about how many problems there exist in the real world that need very creative solutions. Because right now people will say they're impossible. But if we could get our community to make a concerted effort on those problems, oh my God, the world would be completely different. So, and I'm talking to like you as an individual, not somebody else, not anybody that may be like a streamer. No, like you as just an ordinary, normal video game player or just game player, board games, whatever kind of games you like to play. You have a superpower. I think that's
yes, and yes. You have a superpower, and you have. I like how this podcast I listen to a lot, which is Entrepreneurs on Fire. John Lee Dumas says that you have a responsibility with the people you could potentially be serving to serve them. So use that superpower and make the world a better place by doing your entrepreneurial venture, social initiative, being the best at your work that you can be, whatever that looks like. You have a responsibility with that people. So go ahead and take that opportunity, take that chance, and make the best out of it. So thank you again for all that wisdom, all that, all that energy that you've brought to the podcast, all that knowledge and experience that you've brought as well. However, Christen, engagers, as you know by now, at least for now and for today, it is time to say that it's game over. Engagers, thank you for listening to the Professor Game podcast, and I hope you enjoyed this interview with Christen. Do you have questions that you would like to ask other future guests? Please go to professorgame.com/question and ask that question yourself. If it is selected, it'll come up in a future episode and you will get your answer live by one of those guests who's not going to be expecting it, so you'll get a very honest answer. And remember, before you go on to your next mission, before you click that continue button, remember to subscribe or follow, whatever the terminology is on your favorite podcast app. Do that absolutely for free and listen to the next episode of Professor Game. See you there.